Good afternoon. I'd like to show you a artifact that I came across some years ago. It's a music box that was supposedly owned by someone named Mercy Goode. This is a picture of Mercy. I don't know if you know your American history, but Mercy's mother was Sarah Goode, the first woman in America to be tried and hung as a witch in America. She actually was a witness at her mother's trial when she was 4 years old. And later she was convicted herself of being a witch at 4 years old. You have to imagine how terrible it must have been to be a 4-year-old in a prison in New England at that time. Finally, she was released. Good Samaritan paid for her to get out. And she stayed around the area, but not a lot is known about her later life, other than she eked out a very poor and meager living, doing people's fortunes and stuff like that. She lived a long time. She died, I think, in her 80s, and she had two final wishes. One was to be buried next to her mother, and the other was to have a grave belt placed on her grave. Now, her mother, being convicted as a witch in America, was not allowed to be buried in the churchyard. Convicted witches are not allowed to be buried on hollow ground, so she was buried outside on the other side of the fence. So when Mercy was buried, they buried her next to her mother on the outside of the fence. They also placed a grave bell on her grave. Now, I don't know if you understand what a grave bell is. I can kind of show you here. We can say that this is the casket, and it's amazing that it still works. It still plays music. So they placed Mercy in the grave, in their casket, and they buried her. And then they placed the, excuse me here, it's hard to do this with one hand. Then they placed the grave bell on top of the grave. And normally that would have been the end of the story, But 3 days later, the groundskeeper was getting ready to go to bed, and he heard a commotion outside. And so he went outside to listen, and he heard something. There's a bell in the distance. He started to search the cemetery, but he couldn't find anything. And finally, he realized the ringing bell was coming from outside the cemetery. Mercy's grave. See what happens when you say mercy? So he ran back to the church and started ringing the bell, calling all the townspeople. They all showed up along with the priest, and they started to dig. Now, a lot of the townspeople, they did not like Mercy, and they had never liked Mercy, so they kind of were really reluctant to do her this favor. But the priest said, you have to. It's the Christian thing to do. So they started digging. And as they were digging, they could hear something faintly in the ground, something faint, scratching. Mercy was scratching at the top of her grave, trying to get out. They finally, still hear it? They finally got the grave opened up and the casket up on top of the ground. And the priest ran over and, with a pair of pliers and some other tools, and opened it up. But Mercy wasn't there. The grave was empty. The casket was totally empty except for a note from Mercy. It said, I was shown no mercy in my life. You shall find no mercy now. The townfolk, they went crazy. They figured they had just been tricked into a curse. I mean, opening a witch's grave is not a good thing to do. They went to the priest, and the priest said, what we have to do is we have to bury it. We have to put it back in the ground. So they put the bell, everything, and rushed, closed it back up, and they started lowering it down to the ground. They got it lowered and they started putting dirt on it. But they could hear something way down in the ground. It was the bell ringing. Finally, they got all the dirt back. The townsfolk were still really upset. They didn't know what they were going to do. The priest said, well, I think I have an idea. So he rips his cross from his neck and he places it on her grave, just like that. And says, hopefully, as long as we leave this cross here and it never leaves, hopefully it can contain the evil that's within. And that's the story. That's the story of Mercy Goode. These are true characters from history. You can look it up. And hopefully that cross is still there. Hopefully it will never, ever move from there either. Have a good day.